I'd like to introduce to you my fellow board members and the company secretary. I'll begin by introducing to you Mr. Philip Oredu to my right, who's the managing director of the bank. I have Nana Otuo Achampong, and now you have to rise and wave so they can see you, a board member. And then Mr. Yoku Kosa here, so another board member. And to his extreme right, Mr. Ben Bath. We also do have directors joining us remotely, those who are locked in their countries because they can't come in for the reason of closure of borders. And I have Mrs. Helen Nankani, whose picture you should see on your screen. Next in line is Ms. Rosalind Kenya, also held up in the UK. And next to that is Mr. Joe Mensah, who also can't be here because he's held up in the UK. We do have some local directors who are here present in Ghana, but because of the protocols of physical distancing, we thought it wise that they would also participate remotely. And those directors are Mr. Kofi Osafo-Maafo, Mr. Richard Akutu, and finally, Mr. Solomon Asamoah. Right. To my left, I have Mr. Jojo Akwa, representing the company secretary, Veritas Advisors Limited. We also have joining us remotely are members of the Ghana Stock Exchange, represented by the Managing Director, Mr. Eko Afezi, and Ms. Joyce Boache. Joining us as Mr. or Dr. Jacob Edu from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Mr. Kwame Buamponsem, representing our registrar, Central Securities Depository. We also have with us the bank's external auditor, KPMG, and they're represented by Mr. Labaran Amidou. Okay. I'd like to inform all shareholders who are participating remotely that you have a messaging button to aid your usual question and answer session. We will endeavor to address as many questions as we possibly can within the time allotted. Your questions will be received on a message console and forwarded to the podium by the appointed shareholder rights moderator appointed for this meeting. To facilitate the process, kindly restrict your questions to the specific resolutions under consideration. I would also request that you type out your questions in a clear and concise manner. We also have representatives of CAL's Investor Relations Department and the bank's registrar. Their role will be to interface with you in the chat box to also help answer some of your questions that you'll be posing into the chat box. If your question is about any of the resolutions being considered this morning, please state the resolution number before asking your question. And please ensure that you indicate your name and with this submission that you make. So as I did indicate, you can interface in terms of your question and answer session using the chat box, which you will find to the right bottom of your broadcast screen. Now, to second a motion or to send a comment or question, I'm going to ask you to kindly follow these steps. Number one, you click on Chat as a Guest button. There's a button there called Chat as a Guest. So you click that button. Number two, you type in your name in the space that's provided. And then you tick the box for the terms and conditions, indicating that you accept the terms and conditions. And then finally, you type and submit your questions or comments. If you wish to second the motion, you just type in the word second. Now, in casting our votes for this morning, there will be 9 resolutions that we'll be considering, and you have the opportunity to vote on each of those resolutions. All voting will be done virtually and in real time, either by the online platform on which you're participating now or through a USSD shortcode. I shall now call on Ms. Jifa Megashi, the Head of Investor Relations, to explain fully to us the process for voting for this meeting. Jifa.
Good morning, shareholders. Voting can be done using one of two options. There are on the online platform. These are on the online platform or using a USSD shortcode. The voting options will allow you to cast your vote in real time. So, to participate in the voting using the online platform, please locate the vote box at the bottom of your screen and follow these 4 steps. 1. Please enter the same 4-character unique token code that you used to join the meeting. 2. Please click Cast Your Vote. 3. Once you have done this, you will see the list of 9 resolutions to be voted for. 4. Follow the voting by clicking the plus sign, and then you can select your vote option. And the vote options are for, against, or abstain. Now, if you'd like to participate in the voting via the short code, please follow these 3 steps. On your phone, please dial *899*3#. So please dial *899*3#. You'll then be prompted to enter the same 4-character unique token number that you used to join this meeting. And finally, once you have done this, you can now select your vote option and send. And remember, there are 3 vote options: for, against, or abstain. Please note that you can only vote on any of the resolutions when the chairman declares voting open on that resolution. So what that means is that you cannot jump ahead and vote on resolution 9 when the chairman is speaking about resolution 1. Also, once the chairman declares the close of voting on the resolution, you will no longer be able to access or vote on that resolution. So that resolution would be closed because we would have moved on to another resolution. So please note that for those of you who are still able to join the AGM website, those instructions are available on the website for ease of reference. Also, available on the chat box are Cal registrars and Cal Investor Relations to answer any questions that you have in real time. Once again, voting on any resolution can only be done when the chairman declares voting open on that specific resolution. As I said before, you can't jump ahead and vote for resolution 9 when the chairman has declared resolution 1 open. And the same voting procedure will be used for all the 9 resolutions to be voted on during the AGM. I will repeat this message again once the first 2 voting, once you start voting for the first 2 resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jifa. So just to reiterate what Jifa said, thankfully for those who are joining us remotely, the interface that you have just has 2 pages. The first page is for your registration, where you put in your unique token number, and the second page is just for voting on the resolutions. So you see the 9 resolutions listed there. If you attempt to click on any one of them now, you'll not be able to vote because voting hasn't opened. And like Difa said, if we are considering resolution 1, voting will be open for resolution 1 only. you cannot vote for resolution 2, 4, 8, or 9. And once voting closes, you cannot vote for a resolution which had been opened prior, for which you failed to vote. So please, let's stick with these instructions so we can make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to express their vote whichever way they have on these resolutions. So I'll now call on the company secretary to read the notice of the meeting, which you will find on page 3 of the annual report. I believe you all have the annual reports because that's also been uploaded. It's a fairly big document, but please follow us through as we go along with pages in the report. So the company secretary will read the notice, which you will find on page 3 of your annual report. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Notice of virtual annual general meeting of CalBank Limited. Notice is hereby given that the virtual annual general meeting of CalBank Limited will be held at 10:00 hours GMT on Wednesday, the 24th of June, 2020, and shall be streamed live to all shareholders from the head office of CalBank Limited for the purpose of transacting the following business. The first order of business is to receive and consider the accounts of the bank for the year ended December 31st, 2019, together with the reports of the directors and the external auditor thereon. The second order of business is to re-elect the following directors who are retiring by rotation, and they are Ms. Rosalind Kenya, Mr. Kofi Osafo-Mafo, and Nana Otio Achampong. The third order of business will be to re-elect a director appointed to fill a casual vacancy on the board, and he's in the person of Mr. Kweku Ba-Kosa. Number 4 is to declare a dividend. The fifth item on the agenda will be to approve the remuneration of the directors. The sixth is to authorize the directors to fix the fees of the external auditor. And the final order of business will be to approve the purchase of shares of the bank. The notice is dated the 22nd day of May 2020. It is by order of the board and is signed by Veritas Advisors Limited, the company secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Company Secretary. Right, so the next stage of this proceedings is for me to read my chairman's report. You would find that on page 10 to 13. My intention is just to pick on some highlights within the report. So because I believe you all have it and have had the opportunity to read it. But what I would say to you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my fellow board members, that it is my pleasure to welcome you once again to the annual general meeting of CalBank, and this time for the year ended 31st December 2019. The year 2019 witnessed some upheaval in the banking and financial services sector following a cleanup exercise by the Bank of Ghana of what were deemed to be weak banks, savings and loans, and microfinance companies. It was also a year in which we had to consolidate our position in the banking sector after the various regulatory reforms were introduced, and also had to achieve our minimum capital requirement. Despite the seeming turmoil arising from all of these reforms, your bank continued to maintain a healthy balance sheet and improve profitability for the year under review. In terms of considering the financials, I'd just like to take us back for you to look to page 4 of your booklet. Now, I want you to look at page 4 because it gives a record, a full-year record of what the bank has done since 2016. And with that, I'd just like to consider about 2 or 3 lines in there. The first line I'll consider is your interest income. You would see that the interest income has grown from 557.6 million in 2006 to 912 million for 2019. That is a growth of 64% over this 4-year period. Your net interest income for that same period has grown from 251 odd million to 518 million, representing a 106% growth. Further down the line, you will see your profit before income tax figure. 2016 recorded a pretty low profit, and I'm sure you recall that that was the year that we had to take a massive hit in provisions relating to the BDCs. So that year is not a year we want to count on. But for the subsequent years, we've seen modest growth from 218 to 242 million today. Further down the line, I'd like to look at your total assets, which have grown by almost 95% from 3.6 billion in 2016 to 7 billion as at the end of 2019. Your total deposits also grew from 2.3, almost 2.4 billion to 3.8 billion, representing a 62% rise. And finally, your shareholder equity, which is the 4th item on that line, or in that category, grew from 519.5 million in 2016 to 974, almost 975 in 2019, representing an 88% growth. So you see that the bank's figures are on an upward trajectory. And the whole idea is that we must seek to maintain this trajectory so our profitability would always be improving. Now, to talk about our capitalization, you do know that as at the end of last year, we were required to have a minimum paid-up capital of 400 million Ghana cedis. We achieved that and actually maintained a capital adequacy ratio of 22.7%, which was far in excess of the statutory minimum of 13%. Another area that I would like to pick on is the dividend payment. For those of you who have been following the financial press, I'm sure you would have seen a circular issued by the central bank directing that no bank pay any dividends on the figures for 2019 and even for 2020. The management of the bank engaged with the central bank and demonstrated to them the robustness of our figures, our balance sheet, how resilient our balance sheet is, the resourcefulness of the business, the profitability, the liquidity, and out of that, we were able to convince the central bank that CalBank should be able to pay dividend for the year 2019. And gladly, we were given the approval to pay the full amount that we have proposed. So I think that's a testament to the strength and robustness of your bank. That is not only the issue. We also had to engage with the central bank for the issue of the share buyback, which we'll be considering this morning. Once again, because of the strength of our balance sheet and the liquidity, the Bank of Ghana saw it fit that if we wanted to have a share buyback resolution, then that was also appropriate to do. So I can comfortably and gladly tell you that your bank, as different from other banks, has been authorized to pay dividend. And actually for the 2019, we're proposing a dividend. Of course, you'll be approving it subsequently along the line. But we're proposing a dividend of 0.089 Ghana cedis per share, as against last year when we paid 0.048 cedis per share. So actually, for 2019, we're proposing to pay you 85% more than we paid in 2018. Another area I'd like to touch on is the one of the changes that have occurred on your board and your management. During the year, the managing director, Mr. Frank Edu, and two non-executive directors, Mr. Malcolm Pra and Kobna Kwansa, retired as directors of the bank after several years of meritorious service ranging between 11 and 29 years. I'm sure you all join me in thanking them for the immense contribution that they made to the fortunes of this bank. I'm also delighted to inform you that the Bank of Ghana approved the appointment of Mr. Philip Oredu to take over the reins of this bank effective 1st January 2020. So we do have a substantive managing director in place. I remember when we came for the EGM in December, I reported to you that we had sent notification for approval to the central bank on proposing Mr. Oredu to take the position of managing director. Thankfully, the approval came through, so from the 1st of January, Mr. Oredu assumed the position of managing director of this bank. Now, during the course of the year, Mr. Kweku Barkosa was nominated by the board to fill in a casual vacancy which had been created. That also got approval from the central bank. And then again, at the EGM, which I mentioned earlier, which was held on the 5th of December 2019, Mr. Joe Mensah, Mr. Richard Akutu, Mr. Ben Bath, and Mr. Solomon Asamoah were approved by you shareholders to join the board after they had been vetted and passed by the central bank. Please join me in welcoming these new directors to your board, and I'm hoping that you will give them the necessary support that they require to do their work. Now, in terms of the outlook, when you look at my report, I did say that the sector of the bank in particular looks bright. And this is also a consequence of the financial reforms that we saw and the cleanup and the renewed confidence that we expect that the public should have in banking. And this was buoyed by the introduction of the new deposit insurance scheme to safeguard depositors' funds, and that we expected that all of this would translate into positive gains for banks and banking in general, and that we'll get increased participation from our customers. Unfortunately, the outlook has changed. And from sometime early this year, or from February, March, we're all hit with this current pandemic that we're suffering. And that obviously put a cloud over what we expect to be able to achieve this year. For the first quarter, and when we had our facts behind the figures session at the Ghana Stock Exchange, we were able to report improvements in our financials. Our net interest income had risen by 11.3%. Our profit after tax had gone up by 17%. Loans and advances had gone up by 17%. Total deposits had gone up by 31%. And total assets had gone up by 32%. That represented the first quarter of the year. The second quarter's figures are not quite here yet because June is not finished. But obviously, I'm sure you all do recognize that with the challenges that we're facing globally and nationally, there may be situations where, or there could be some impact on our financials going forward. The test will really come home to roost probably in the third quarter, where we'll see what the impact of all of these restrictions and all what has happened to businesses in the last few months would have impacted on the bank. But I think I'd still like to give you reassurance that because of the strategies we have in place and the way we are seeking to are currently implementing those strategies, We don't expect that we'll be hit in any very difficult way. Already, we're engaging very well with our customers, the very large ones, and where customers have challenges, we've had a way of accommodating and probably rescheduling some of the payments that they have to make. So far, we've been able to weather the storm somewhat. Our staff have been very supportive, even though we had to go through situations where at a certain stage we had only 30% or so of them here, and most were working from home. Gradually, we've been able to increase the numbers, and it doesn't appear to have affected our operations in any challenging way. So I do hope that, expect that going forward, once we continue to stick to this program that we have, and of course, recognizing the opportunities that this pandemic itself is creating within our economy and seizing on those opportunities, we should be able to turn all of that into some good news for your bank. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to express my appreciation to all our valued customers, shareholders, and the regulator for your business, your unwavering support, and the encouragement and guidance that you've given us over the past few years. My gratitude also goes to my colleague board members, those who have left and those who have joined, for your serious efforts and dedication that you have brought to the business of the bank, I beg your pardon. And I must say I'm very glad to have worked and served with all of you. Finally, I'd like to thank management and staff of the bank for your contribution and growth and overall achievements for the year 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your kind attention, and I'm confident that we will continue to deliver strong and consistent performance as a reward for placing your trust in us. Thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda I don't know whether, Kofi, if you're here, you can tell us how many more people have joined and whether we need to repeat the voting instructions for those who probably would have joined us much later. 230, okay. I think before we go on to consider, we'll get Jifa to read out the instructions once again before we start the voting. Right, okay. Now, to ensure the smooth conduct of the business of the day, I would move each motion and invite a shareholder to second the motion. The seconders might indicate and are requested to state their names in full to enable the secretary to take a record of their contribution. As voting will be done electronically, a few minutes will be allowed for each vote to enable participating voters to vote. So what it will be that when I call for the vote to start, we'll allow some minutes, 2-3 minutes or so, to allow voters to indicate their votes. And then once I indicate that the voting is closed, then you wouldn't have access anymore to vote on that particular resolution. And because this is real time, immediately the vote closes, I will see on the screen ahead of me which way shareholders voted. And I would use that to either declare a resolution duly passed or declined. I'll now move to the formal business of the meeting. And each of you by now would have seen the 2019 accounts which we have loaded on the screen. I'll call on the independent auditor to give us the auditor's report, which you will find on page 34 of your annual report. So, Mr. Auditor.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please, the auditor's report is on page 34. And with your permission, I would not go through everything. I'll just read some relevant paragraphs, and then we can take the rest as read. On page 34, we have independent auditors report to the members of CalBank Limited. Report on the audits of the financial statements. Opinion. We have audited the consolidated and separate financial statements of CalBank Limited, the group and the bank, which comprise the statements of financial position as at 31st December 2019, and the statements of comprehensive income, changes in equity, and cash flows for the year then ended, and the notes to the financial statements, which include a summary of significant accounting policies and the explanatory notes as set out on pages 39 to 120. In our opinion, the accompanying consolidated and separate financial statements give a true and fair view of the consolidated and separate financial position of the group and the bank as at 31st December 2019, and of its consolidated and separate financial performance and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standards and in the manner required by the Companies Act 2019, Act 992, and the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, Act 930. We'll take basis of opinion as read. And if I may point some other important information to you on page 36, responsibilities of the directors for the consolidated and separate financial statements, which we will take as read. So will be the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the consolidated and separate financial statements, which we can also take as read. The last header, which is report on page 37, which is report on other legal and regulatory requirements. Compliance with the requirements of Section 137 of the Companies Act 2019, Act 992, and Section 85 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, Act 930. We have obtained all the information and explanations which, to the best of our knowledge and belief, were necessary for the purpose of our audit. In our opinion, proper books of accounts, have been kept so far as appears from our examination of those books. The consolidated and separate statements of financial position and comprehensive income are in agreement with the accounting records and returns. We are independent of the group and the bank under the audit pursuant to Section 143 of the Companies Act 2019, Act 992. The group and the bank's transactions were within their powers, and the group and the bank general comply with the relevant provisions of the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016, Act 930. The group and the bank have generally complied with the provisions of the Anti-Money Laundering Act 2008, Act 749, the Anti-Terrorism Act 2008, Act 762, and all relevant amendments and regulations governing the acts. The engagement partner on the audit resulting in this independence audit report is myself, Labaran Amidu, and signed on behalf of KPMG, Chartered Accountants, Abeligbe, Accra, on 27th day of February 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Auditor. We now come to the first item on the agenda, which is to lay before this House for consideration the accounts of the bank for the financial year ended 31st December 2019, and the report of the directors and external auditor. So this is the document that we're going to be considering. So I now lay before you the audited accounts of the bank sent to all shareholders as required by Section 128 of the Companies Act 2019. We will now take any questions or comments on the accounts laid before us before we go to vote. So if shareholders have any accounts, I beg your pardon, have any questions, you can send those questions in now, which will be passed on to the company secretary to be addressed. Now, we can only allow so many minutes for that, so another 2 or 3 minutes if you have any questions. Okay. Right, there's a question here from the floor.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Samson Ashon, a shareholder. Let me start by congratulating CalBank for the wonderful work that you've done, in spite of the many competitions and the problems, the nightmares and all that is, you've been able to come out without any serious crashes. Congratulations once more. The only thing I want to draw your attention to, it's on the page 39, about the net impairment. I realize it's a bit on the rising side. It's coming up a little bit. So I'll advise that the bank look at that seriously so that we'll be able to maximize our profits more. That's number one. The other one is very, very insignificant. But because of the nature of CalBank and the way they work so efficiently, that is concerning on page 84, on the regulatory breaches. It is so insignificant, but the fact that you are a force to reckon with, I'll mention this on compliance and statutory liquidity requirements. There's a default of 24. It is so small, but the whole thing is that with the caliber of CalBank Ghana Limited and what you're doing, I don't want you to be given any sort of default. So let's look at that one too. So you go without any scars. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, there's well, it's more of a comment, really, from Carl Abrokwa, who says, good growth in net interest income over the period. However, net fee income for the group dipped from 69 odd million to 46 odd million. Also, there's a significant increase in impairment from 66.7 million to 83.3 million, which I guess reflects the comment Mr. Sean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll deal with those questions very quickly. Yeah. So thank you very much for noting the matter of impairment. Impairment is the bane of banking. As you know, you're selling money and then always collecting the money is difficult. We have done well in the past to rake in all of the monies outstanding which are owed us. And even where provisions have been made, we have a recoveries unit which still goes after chasing those monies. So any impairment you see here doesn't necessarily mean that it's forgone. No, our recoveries team continue to chase after these monies. But because of the regulatory requirements and accounting principles on how to report, we must indicate that some of these loans are challenged. But they are not forever at all forgotten, and that we continue to pursue them. And thank you very much for also mentioned the issue about the regulatory infraction. That's the thing. If you're so good, then you become a victim of your own success. I agree that we have a sterling record and that we must maintain it to make sure that we don't fall far to any of these breaches. So thank you very much, sir. All right. So there being no further questions, I now move that the accounts of the bank for the year ended 31st December 2019 and the reports of the directors and auditor thereon be and are hereby deemed duly considered. Would a member please second this motion?
My name is Samson Ashon. I second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ashon. I did say that because we've had so many new joiners on the virtual platform, before we vote, I'd like Jifa to come back and repeat the instructions so we're all pretty clear in our minds how we have to do it.
Good morning again, shareholders. So for those of you who have joined recently, I'd like to go through the voting process. Voting can be done using one of two options. These are on the online platform or via the USSD shortcode. The two voting options will allow you to cast your vote in real time. So to participate in the voting exercise using the online platform, please locate the vote box at the bottom of your broadcast screen and follow these 4 steps. 1, please enter the same 4-character unique token number that you used to join the meeting. 2. Click Cast Your Vote. 3. You will then see the list of 9 resolutions to be voted for. 4. Follow the voting by clicking the plus sign on the resolution being voted for, and then you can select your vote option. And remember that there are 3 vote options: for, against, or abstain. For those who want to participate in voting via the short code, please follow the following 3 steps. 1. Please dial *899#. Please dial *899*3# on your phone. So I'll repeat that: *899*3# on your phone. You will also be required to enter the same 4-character unique token number that you used to join this meeting. And once you have done this, you can now select your vote option and press send on your phone. Remember that there are 3 vote options: for, against, and abstain. Please note that you can only vote on any of the resolutions when the chairman declares voting open on that particular resolution. So you will not be able to vote for resolution 9 when resolution 1 is being voted for and is open. Once the chairman declares the close of the voting on any particular resolution, you will no longer be able to access or vote on that resolution. So once we're on resolution 2, you will not be able to go back and vote for resolution 1, and so on and so forth. So to reiterate, voting instructions are available on the AGM website. Please remember that the Registrar and Cal Investor Relations are available to answer any questions in the chat box in real time. And voting on any resolution can only be done when the chairman declares the voting open for that specific resolution. This same voting procedure will be used for all 9 resolutions to be voted on during the AGM. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chifa. So I now put the motion to the meeting. You may start voting now. For resolution 1. I'm closing voting in the next 30 seconds. Okay, voting is now closed for resolution 1. Now, per the voting results that I have ahead of me on the screen, I can tell you immediately, in terms of vote numbers, that 255 shareholders voted for the resolution, and 2 shareholders voted against, with 2 abstentions. So the vote, I hereby declare the motion duly carried. Thank you. The next item is the re-election of directors retiring by rotation. As was mentioned earlier, 3 of your directors are required to retire by rotation at this meeting. And in accordance with the requirements of the Companies Act and the Constitution of the bank, we are putting forward these 3 directors who have indicated their willingness to continue to serve for re-election. They are in the persons of Ms. Rosalind Kenya, Mr. Kofi Osafo Mafo, and Nana Otua Champon. The first director retiring by rotation is Ms. Rosalind Kenya. I hereby move that Ms. Rosalind Kenya, who is retiring by rotation and who, being eligible, has offered herself for re-election in accordance with Article 78 of the Company's Constitution and Section 325 of the Companies Act, B, and is hereby re-elected as a director of the company. May I have a member to second this motion, please?
My name is George. I second the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Thank you. Now, we'll now take any questions on this resolution before we consider the vote. Okay, in the absence of any questions, I'll now put the motion to the meeting. Now, voting for Resolution 2 opens now. Okay, voting closes now. And per the report I see on the screen, this resolution is also duly carried. Thank you very much. The next director retiring by rotation is Mr. Kofi Osafo-Maafo. And I hereby move that Mr. Kofi Osafo-Maafo, who is retiring by rotation and who, being eligible, has offered himself for re-election in accordance with Article 79 of the Company's Constitution and Section 325 of the Companies Act, B, and is hereby re-elected as director of the company. Would a member please second this motion?
My name is Antonio Ofori. I second the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ofori. The floor is now open for any questions before we consider the vote on this resolution. Okay, so there being no questions, I'll now put the motion to the meeting. Voting for resolution is open now. And this is for Resolution 3. Okay, so voting now closes for Resolution 3. And the screen tally indicates that the voting or the motion is duly carried. Thank you. The third director retiring by rotation is Nana Otuo Achampong. I hereby move that Nana Otuo Achampong, who is retiring by rotation and who, being eligible, has offered himself for re-election in accordance with Article 78 of the Company's Constitution and Section 325 of the Companies Act, B, and is hereby re-elected as the director of the company. Would a member please second this motion? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We'll now take any questions on this resolution before we go to vote.
Mr. Chairman, we have a question on Resolution 4 from Prince Abole, who says, is it possible to know how performance on his path was and his achievements?
Who's on who? On who?
Nana Otuo Achampong.
Nana Otuo
Yes.
Achampong. Okay, so I'll answer that quickly by asking you to turn to page 6 of the annual report, where you will see a profile of Nana Otuo Achampong. We'll now put Resolution 4 to the vote, and voting starts now. Okay, so voting for Resolution 4 closes now. And the screen tally indicates that this resolution is duly carried. Thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda is for the re-election of a director appointed to fill a casual vacancy on the board. At the meeting of the Board of Directors of the bank held on the 8th of May 2019, Mr. Kweku Barkosa, having previously consented in writing to be appointed as a director of the bank, and the prior approval of Bank of Ghana having been obtained for this appointment, was so appointed by the directors to fill a casual vacancy that had been created on the board. Now, in accordance with Article 74B of the bank's constitution, a director appointed to fill a casual vacancy on the board shall hold office until the following general meeting and shall be eligible for re-election. Your board accordingly recommends to members to approve the re-election of Mr. Kweku Barkosa as director of the bank. The profile of Mr. Kosa appears on page 7 of this annual report. So I now move that Mr. Kweku Barkosa be and is hereby re-elected as director of the bank. Would a member please second this motion? So I have Mr. Frederick Amu-Mensah seconding the motion. Thank you very much. Now the question is open, I beg you, but the floor is open for any questions anybody would have on this resolution before we consider it. So the floor is open for questions. Okay, so if there are no questions, then I'll put the motion to the meeting. The voting for resolution 5 opens now. Okay, so I'll call a close to voting on resolution 5. So voting on resolution 5 is closed, and per the tally that I see on the screen, the resolution is duly carried. Thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda is for the declaration of a dividend. And in my opening remarks, I did indicate the level of work that had been done by management in engaging the central bank and convincing them that we have the ability and the resourcefulness to be able to pay a dividend and pay a dividend in full. The dividend that we're recommending to you this year, like I said, is about 85% higher than what we paid last year. So I hereby move that the recommendation of the directors to declare and pay a final dividend of 0.089 cedis per share for the year ended 31st December 2019 be and is hereby approved. Would a member second this motion, please? So I have Reginald Jonu Alija seconding the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Alija. So the floor is open for questions. I understand that there's a bit of a delay in getting feedback on some of this, so I'll allow a bit more time so as many questions as can be fielded can come through. So the floor is now open for questions. Yes, please, go ahead.
Something has shown is the name. I think that it will be much of a disservice if we do not congratulate the chairman and the board for the immense thing that you've done for shareholders. In fact, we must say that you've really done a yeoman's job. And this is a feather in your cap. I think that some of us, when we had a letter from the Bank of Ghana, suspending the payment of dividend, we were highly disappointed. Because 2020, yes, because of COVID-19. But 2019, that profit was declared already. So we thought that banks that are able to pay that should go ahead and sail through. So all that you've done, let me say a big thank you again for that. We are so happy. And I think that is a signal for other banks to also force out and pay us. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Sean. I can see some of the questions coming in, and one which keeps repeating itself is whether the dividend payment has been approved by the central bank. I did indicate that, yes, we do have that approval from the central bank following our engagement with them, and they going through all our books, our financials, and satisfying themselves that we have a robust balance sheet, the company is resourceful, we have strong liquidity, so we are able to pay what we had recommended for payment. So yes, we do have that approval.
There's a comment, a question as well, which comes from a shareholder who only identifies himself as Kwame and says, could you tell us what CalBank did differently from others to pay dividends for 2019?
Okay, Kwame, so like I said only a moment ago, the Bank of Ghana had to satisfy itself that looking at the books of CalBank is resourceful enough to be able to pay a dividend. I cannot speak for other banks, and I don't know what they would have submitted or what interventions they would have sought from the central bank. But we engage with the central bank, and we have it in writing that we're good to go. So the dividend that we're declaring today has the approval, no doubt about that, has the full approval of the central bank. And how come CalBank is able to do that? Well, I'm sure if you trace through the trajectory of our performance over the years, that should convince you why, and you shouldn't even be asking that question, Kwame, because for the 30 years or so that we've been here, we've paid a dividend every year except for the year that because of the deep write-offs, we couldn't pay a cash dividend. But even in that year, we gave bonus shares, which in value exceeded what would have even paid in dividends. So we have a record of dividend paying from day one of the formation of this bank.
Mr. Chairman, there's a comment from Cedars Investments Limited, which says, congratulations on the declaration of dividends. The Ghana cedi has only 100 pesos. Next time, the dividend share should be real money, i.e. no division of pesos, as we have it presently at 0.089. It would be good to round the calculations to real money. And then there's another one from Monica Ojumu, who says, is this dividend for 2019 or 2020?
Okay, so we'll take the last one first. Yes, the dividend is for 2019. The accounts that we're considering today are 2019 accounts, not 2020. So the dividend that's proposed for payment is for 2019. And talking about 0.089 not being real money, hopefully with improved performance, we'll just graduate upwards. Our dividend payment is a function of profitability and how much we have in reserves. And you would notice, and like I did say, last year, what we paid is 85% less of what we're paying this year. So that should itself tell you that we're on a growth path, and that trajectory hopefully should continue if we continue to perform well.
Mr. Chairman, there's a comment from, a question from Senor K. Hossi, who says, what target payout ratio does the board consider ideal?
Okay, so the board or the company has a dividend payout ratio of maximum 33%. This policy has been around since the inception of this bank. And actually in 2004, when we went to the IPO, our document specifically stated that. So we'll always pay a dividend up to a maximum of 33% of the results of the year. We have paid that sort of amount in some years, and other years we've fallen short. But yes, we do have a policy for dividend payment, and it's 33%. I think we've allowed enough time on this subject. Okay. So I now open voting for Resolution 6 for the approval of the motion to pay a dividend of 0.089 Ghana cedis per share. Voting opens now. Right, so voting for Resolution 6 closes now. And per the tally that I see on the screen, it's been overwhelmingly voted for. So this motion is duly carried. Thank you very much. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the remuneration of directors. Now this requires for the approval of executive and non-executive directors' remuneration, which are respectively disclosed on Note 13 and 14 to the financial statements. Now, I move that in accordance with Section 185 of the Companies Act 2019, approval be and is hereby given for the remuneration of the executive and non-executive directors of the bank for the year ended 31st December 2019, and for the payment of non-executive directors' fees for the year 2020 at the same rates as for the previous year. And I move that in accordance with Section 185 of the Companies Act 2019, approval be and is hereby given for the contract and remuneration of the Managing Director, Mr. Philip Oriedu, on substantially the same terms as existed in his previous contract. Would a member please second this motion? All right, so I have Mr. Jemfua Asante Dodu seconding the motion. Thank you very much. Now the floor is open for any questions.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of questions have come in. The first is from Ernest Osei-Afo, who asks, how do the fees rank among the industry? And what are the figures, please? And then the second question is from Senor K. Hossi, who says, kindly advise exact remuneration for last year. And third question from Joshua Owusu-Ansah, who asks, is this an honorarium kind?
Right, so for the first question, asking about how these figures rank with the industry, we do engage in comparative surveys with other banks in the country and even with companies listed on the stock exchange. And we do this every other year or maximum every 3 years. So once we get the industry-wide figures, then we mirror the industry averages in terms of payments for certain allowances and board fees and whatnot. So yeah, to answer your question directly, yes, we rank within the industry following industry practice and standards. Now, to get some detail on the figures, as another gentleman asked, I would refer you to notes 13 and 14, where the figures are clearly displayed. I don't know if you want anything more on that. But you see in note 13 where the personnel expenses, where you will have the executive salaries in, and then the bottom where it's other expenses where you have directors' fees and allowances. Now, it has grown from 1.5 million to 5, and the reason for that is that there's been an increased number of directors, there's been more meetings held, and also remember that at the EGM in December of last year, shareholders approved the payment of an honorarium to 3 retiring directors. So all of that is in here, and that's why you see those comparative numbers between 2018 and 19.
Mr. Chairman, there's it's a suggestion really from Mr. Adumaku, who says, I want to ask why the managing director's contract terms are to be the same as last year. Conditions are not permanent, so why could the board of directors not add something small to the new terms?
What's his name again?
Adumaku.
Mr. Adumaku, I'm sure you can expect a Christmas hamper from Mr. Redu when the time comes. No, these executive salaries are reviewed maybe every 2 years, every 3 years. So maybe sometime in the future you would see some adjustment to it. But obviously we've also got to be conscious of what, like I said, what the industry pays and how we fit within the industry. And it wasn't quite ready for us to have any adjustments on those figures just yet. So thank you for that question, Mr. Adumaku. Any more questions?
Yes, Ben Mills-Papo asks, are non-executive directors paid on a monthly basis or per sitting?
Right. So we have a distinction between sitting allowance and board fees. Board fees are paid quarterly, and that is fixed. That's standard. And then the sitting allowance is paid as and when you attend a meeting. So to explain that again, board fees are fixed. So board members get paid every quarter for the sum that has been agreed for the year. So that is fixed. Then there's the variable one, which is the sitting allowance. So anytime you attend a meeting, for having attended that meeting, there's a sitting allowance. So that's how that's made up. Can we move on? All right, so I'd like to close the questions on this. Thank you very much. Sorry, more questions? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, a couple of questions have just come in.
All right.
There's one from Kwame. The question is not very clear. I'll read it as is. It says, how do I, as a shareholder, act in excluding or including a package from or into the remuneration, respectively? Thank you.
Kwame, unfortunately, that question is not very clear.
Yeah,
Maybe if you can retype it.
Then there are a couple of questions also from Senyo Kehosi and also Eric Otu asking about basically the remuneration per director.
Well, I see a question here from Mr. Senyo Hosi, who says he's concerned about the many meetings and what steps we are taking to minimize the number of meetings. Mr. Hosi, I can assure you we don't hold very many meetings. We hold quarterly meetings. Now, in each quarter, we would hold all the subcommittee meetings and then a board meeting. We've had to increase the number of subcommittees, and that's by regulation. Before, for example, we now have a standing cyber security committee or a name of that sort. Before that, the issues relating to cyber security were considered under the risk committee. The central bank has directed that we should have a separate committee. So obviously that committee would have a chairman and it will be populated by members. So that's why some of these meetings will be more than we had the previous year. And it's by regulation that we must have these committees in place. But the number of meetings that we have is fixed for the quarter. So for every quarter, we would hold all of those subcommittees, committee meetings, and then culminate that in the board meeting at the end of it. We don't hold meetings in between unless there's an issue which requires that the agency of it requires that we meet. For example, only in this year, we've had to meet a few times because of COVID and the impact on the bank. These were not scheduled meetings, but these were necessary and emergency meetings that we needed to have because of the situation we are in and to make sure that we're able to weather the storm of this COVID pandemic. So yes, we don't hold unnecessary meetings. We hold scheduled meetings, but if there is a need for an urgent one, we will hold a meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there's a comment, well, a question from George Amwako Teming, who asks, what influenced the increase in the number of directors?
Great. The reason why we had to increase the number of directors, once again, was because we needed to set up more committees. Now, the bank's charter itself allows us a certain maximum level of directors. It's just that we hadn't exhausted that in the past. But because now we have some more committees added to what we used to have, those committees needed to be populated, and populated by people with the requisite skills to man those committees. And of course, you don't want to overload members with committee sittings. So currently what we have is that because of the spread of membership we have, no individual board member sits on more than 3 committees. If we didn't do that, you could have members sitting on 4 or 5 committees at the same time, and that doesn't give the relevant expertise and professional input that the bank requires to do its work. So yes, the numbers have increased, but it's in line with the limits that we have in the bank's constitution.
And then, Mr. Chairman, there's also a recommendation from Senyo Kehosi again, who says, I believe the CEO's remuneration must be at a minimum revised upwards by inflation.
Thank you, Mr. Hosi. You joined the hamper list. Any more questions? One more? Okay, there's one more question. We'll take that and then move on.
Well, there's a question from Kwame, who asks, are board and meeting allowances paid to members per their contributions? Does an idle member of a board or meeting receive the same amount as a member who thinks outside the box to bring something more productive to shareholders?
Thank you very much. Okay, so an inactive board member or a board member who doesn't attend the requisite number of meetings would have to exit the board, because we even have to report to the central bank how many meetings a member has attended during the year. So there's a register which gets sent to the central bank to show that board members are actively participating or regularly participating in those board meetings. So we don't have a system where board members will not show up for meetings but get paid. Like I did say, certain allowances are paid for attending meetings. In terms of the quality of the submissions or the input for board members, we have a peer review mechanism. And in fact, we've recently introduced one from a third party reviewing board members. So there's a review of board members' attendance and performance at these meetings to ensure that every member is giving of his best. I'm sure if any board member should receive any negative reviews, that board member would advise himself or herself that he or she is not fit for sitting on this board. So I can assure you that the requisite skills that you have in here, and for the spread, with these increased numbers, you're getting the best of what we possibly could give to this bank. All right, so on that note, I'd like to close this, and declare voting for Resolution 7 open now. Okay, voting on Resolution 7 is now closed. And per the tally on the screen, I see the votes duly carried. Thank you very much. I think shareholders will have to bear with us that we're making every attempt to answer as many questions as you pose. The volumes of them coming in, and also because of the delayed feed, sometimes we don't get some of the questions before we even go to vote on resolutions. So that at the time that your question probably comes in, the resolution will have been long covered. So then there's no point in going back to look at it. But as much as possible, we'll try and answer every question that you would put on the platform. All right, so remuneration of the auditors. Now, Section 141 of the Companies Act requires that the auditor's remuneration shall be fixed by the company in general meeting or in such a manner as the company in general meeting may determine. So I therefore move now that the directors be and are hereby authorized to fix the remuneration of the auditor in respect of the financial year ending 31st December 2020. May I have a shareholder to second this motion, please? All right, I already have a seconder here. Yeah, Prince Abole. Prince Abole seconds the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Abole. Now, the resolution is open for any questions or comments that any member may have.
Mr. Chairman, there's a question from the seconder to the motion, who says, on what basis are the fees of the external auditor set?
Okay. So once again, that itself is based on industry practice or industry standards and the volume of work that they have to do. Our auditors audit the CalBank itself. They audit the Cal Asset Management Company. They used to audit the car brokers, which is now no longer in existence. So it depends on the volume of work that they have to do, and if there's any special work that will require them to undertake for us in the course of the year. But suffice to say, the remuneration or the fees paid them reflect what is industry standards and practice. Thank you. Okay, so there be no other question. I now put the motion for Resolution 8 to the vote. Voting now opens. Right, so voting on Resolution 8 is now closed. And per the tally screen, I see that the vote is duly carried. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is a special business relating to the share buyback. And that is the final business of the day. Now, the approval for a share buyback by the bank is in order to protect shareholders' value, and the bank proposes to buy back shares for that purpose. Now, we are recommending to shareholders that the bank be authorized to purchase up to 5% of its own shares. But I'd like at this stage to invite the head of our investor relations, Ms. Jifar Megashi, to give you the rationale for why we need this resolution. Thank you.
Good morning again, shareholders. I'd like to refer you to page 122 of the annual report. And as the chairman rightly said, the board of directors is proposing the purchase of up to 5% of the bank's issued shares. We have 626 million shares in issue. So the 5% would represent 31.3 million shares, approximately. We've all observed the downward pressure of CalBank share price through 2019 and continuing into 2020. For the year to date, the share price has dipped just over 20%. And most of the selling pressure has emanated from smaller individual shareholders. This is retail shareholders disposing of shares at more or less any price. And this situation was compounded in 2019 by many retail shareholders having monies tied up in some of the collapsed microfinance institutions and also the savings and loans companies, some of which are still unresolved. So the proposed buyback is a mechanism to support the share price from selling pressure from very small trades. And per the modalities, we will agree with the appointed brokers bands within which the buyback will be applied to support the share price from retail shareholders disposing of shares. Now, during this COVID-19 pandemic, the board of directors is very mindful of the need to be prudent with liquidity and also with capital. And the bank in April and May conducted very extensive stress testing on the impact of the share buyback and also the proposed dividend payment, which has now been approved, on our capital and also on our liquidity. And we shared this analysis with the regulator, Bank of Ghana, who fully agreed that the bank's capital would not be unduly adversely affected by both proposals. In other words, both the share buyback that was proposed and also the proposed dividend payment. Now, shareholders will recall that in 2018, you approved a share buyback, and as far back as 2006, we also had another share buyback. So this is a mechanism that we have used in the past. We hope that you will support us again by approving this resolution to support and stabilize the CalBank share price. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jifar. So I now move that in accordance with sections 63 and 64 of the Companies Act 2019 and Article 15 of the amended Constitution of the bank, approval be and is hereby given for the purchase by the bank of up to 5% of the issued shares of the bank. Would a member please second the motion? I think I have a seconder here. Right. Prince Abole seconds the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Abole. Now, any questions after the explanation by Gifa? Is there any further clarifications that a member seeks?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's a comment from George Amwako Temeng, who says the company is paying a good dividend and at the same time embarking on a share buyback program, both involving significant cash flows. Please, will I be wrong to conclude that the bank doesn't have strong growth opportunities, hence the distribution of cash to shareholders?
Any more?
And then there's a comment from Kofi Kwashi, who asks, how is the bank going to finance this buyback?
Okay, so maybe I can begin by answering the first one. The dividend payment and the share buyback are not linked in any way. The share buyback will require to be able to support your share price if there's undue pressure on the price for which makes it plummet. Like Gifa did indicate, we came for this resolution in 2006 and again in 2018. On both occasions, we didn't have need to use them. So we are asking for, and the point is that this resolution only lasts for a year, okay? So it is not the case that, for example, the one we took in 2006, then lives for the rest of life, and then anytime you need it, you can use it. No, it's only given to you for a year. So we're asking for it again for this year, or for 2020, so that should there be the need for us to intervene to show up or to protect the price of your shares, then we'll make use of it. So it's not money that we're necessarily going to spend. No, we've had these resolutions in the past and we hadn't had to use it. But obviously, in the times that we are in now, and like Gifa explained, people having suffered financial diminution because of the loss of their monies with savings and loans and microfinance institutions. People are hard-pressed, and sometimes they want to dump their shares for next to nothing. We should be able to be available to be able to pick these up and at least maintain a decent price for the shares. So it's just a mechanism that we will make use of if need be, but it's not something that we're going out to go expense.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a few more comments have come in. Sanyo K. Hossi says, Mr. Chairman, the opt-in to buy back shares suggests that the board does not believe or cannot find any other long-term investment that will yield shareholders a better return than buying back the shares. Is that what you are communicating?
I suppose this question came in before I gave this explanation.
Yes.
So with this explanation, I believe that Mr. Hossi would now understand the reason or the rationale for this buyback. And that is not something we're buying to flog later on, but it's just to protect the share price from any excessive pressure that would result in a diminution in value of your shares.
Okay. Then there are a couple of questions around the price at which the bank will be buying back the shares. It's one from Francis Ajepong.
There is no fixed price for doing that. So we will be in the market, and if we need to intervene at whatever level, we will do. But no, there is no fixed price for doing that.
TK Latte says, the Ghana Stock Exchange has amended the stock pricing methods, and now a few retail trades won't impact the share price. Does this affect the buyback program in any way?
No, it does not. Like I did indicate, the buyback program is just something to hold in defense, not necessarily to be used, but only in defense. And if we require it, yes, we would make use of it.
Okay. Aglobi asks, well, the first part of his question has really been answered. Please, can you give us an explanation for the rationale for the share buyback and at what price? I believe those have been answered. But he has a follow-on question which says, how will this procedure be done, and can members voluntarily sell? And also, why did you stop the stock brokerage business?
Right, yes, members can still voluntarily sell their shares on the stock market. I mean, it's an open market, and once you can place your order for the sale and the broker finds a buyer, yeah, that trade can be made. But the only point that we're making is that we don't want a situation where, when people are desperate to get rid of their shares, that desperation should draw down the value of your shares as well. So that's the reason for this resolution. Now the other question was what?
Why we stopped the stock brokerage business?
Well, we stopped the brokerage business because it wasn't stimulating enough, to the extent that the markets had dwindled. There wasn't very much happening in there, and we are carrying a staff load that we had to continue paying for very little. I mean, unfortunately, and our stock market hasn't been that dynamic or buoyant. So it meant that people haven't had very many trades. I mean, business has been slow, and we deemed it necessary that we could come out of this business and concentrate our efforts somewhere else, rather than continuing to lose money in that space, which can be deployed to other parts of the business.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Yes. Carl Abrokwa asks, are other listed banks also engaging in buyback? If not, may your buyback not likely send the wrong signals to the investor public?
Well, we don't know what other banks are doing, but of course, this is only the beginning of the year for AGMs. We don't know what other banks have in store. But surely it's a mechanism that any company which has stocks listed on the exchange will take to protect its shares. And you know that banking stocks are particularly under pressure when it comes to people offloading their shares and, of course, devaluing the price. And ours is just to make sure that, should that happen, we have a mechanism for stabilizing it, as it were. We're not going to buy to push your price up, but to stabilize it so it doesn't fall to rock bottom.
Noel Addo asks, having exited your position as a licensed dealing member of the Ghana Stock Exchange, will you be in a good position to ensure a successful share buyback agenda?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will appoint a broker to act in our stead.
George Amako Temeng says, can you share the bank's past experience on how the previous buyback program helped sustain the share price?
Like I did say, we had it for 2006 and 2018, but in both situations, we didn't have to use it. So to repeat myself, it's just a defense mechanism that we want to hold in our arsenal. And like I did say, it lasts for a year only. So after this year, it lapses, and if you want to do it again, you have to come back for a resolution. But the point is that you must have it in your arsenal. So should the situation arise, you can make use of it. And so that's why we're coming for this. So it's not necessary. We are not necessarily saying that we're going to go out into the market and expense monies to stabilize the price. But should it come to a situation where your share price is falling at levels that are disturbing, then surely we should make use of this mechanism to provide you with a safety net of a sort. Yeah, okay.
Well, Nana Riafi says the share buyback is premised on Carl's equity price not reflecting intrinsic value, I guess. Any idea what board and management think is the intrinsic value of Carl's share?
Well, Carl is listed on the stock exchange, so the price you see there is a market-determined price. we do not influence prices, and I'm not sure any other institution has the capacity to do that. What will influence the price is the supply and demand for the shares on the exchange. So no, the intrinsic value of it is not determined by us, and it's also sometimes a reflection of shareholders' interest, especially when you expect that some good dividends is going to be paid. You see people going to acquire more shares. Just based on the facts and figures program that we tend to have at the stock exchange, it's a way of informing shareholders on which direction the bank is going, and then they can make a good decision for themselves as to whether they want to continue to hold in store or even buy more shares.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are a few others, but I believe you primarily addressed.
Okay,
most of
so
the
I would like to close the session on question and answer session on this and move to put the motion for resolution 9 to the floor. That I now put the motion to the meeting, and the voting on resolution 9 may begin now. So I now declare voting on resolution 9 closed. And per the tally table, I see that the vote of the resolution is duly carried. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, that exhausts the entire 9 resolutions which we brought to you for consideration this morning. And I'd like to thank you for all your support in voting favorably for all the resolutions present. Now we've come to the stage where we have to conclude the business of this meeting. And I have this difficult I'm just getting emotional here. But today is my last AGM for CalBank. I'm retiring from CalBank at the end of this month, on 30th of June. I've been with this bank since 2000, and got made chairman of the board in 2010. So I've been with this bank for some 19 years or so. And I do recall that when I joined this bank in 2000, in those days, we probably just had like 3 branches. We had here, Kumasi, and Takrady. Today, we talk about 30 branches. Today, we talk about over 100 ATMs spread across the length and breadth of this country. If my memory serves me right, in about 2000, Carl was reporting profits before tax of 25 million Ghana cedis. And by 2004, when we listed on the stock exchange, we were reporting profits of about 45 million. Today, we are reporting 243 million. Over the same period, for our shareholders' funds, for 2000, we had about 36 million for shareholders' funds. That had risen to about 166 million in 2004. And today we're talking 975 million for shareholders' funds. To add to that, in 2000, we had about 236 million for total assets. By 2004, when we went to listing, we had about 825 million. Today, or as at the end of 2019, we're reporting 7 billion in total assets. So obviously, I've been part of a certain growth path of this bank, which I'm extremely proud of. I've enjoyed every moment that I've had with this bank through some tough times, but it's all served us well, and we've come out much stronger, a bigger brand, and a very recognizable brand in this country. So today, I inform you that I'm doing my last AGM, but I wouldn't be gone, because for future AGMs, hopefully we'll be having it in an auditorium, and I can get to sit with you as ordinary shareholders like myself, I'll sit with you and conspire with you to ask the board for more dividend. So you can rest assured that I will be with you in subsequent years at meetings. Now, over the years, I'm sure you've seen the transformation of the bank and directors come and go. I must tell you that now you have a brilliant array of directors with ages ranging from the late 40s to the early 70s with a varied level, skill set, and experience. And this can only inure to the benefit of this bank. You have an array of, or an assemblage of a solid team of professionals to help drive this bank for another 30 or more years. 2020 marks the 30th anniversary of this bank. And I can assure you that with the team that has been assembled to steer the affairs of this bank, we'll be talking a much stronger bank with a much improved presence in terms of recognition and the business dynamics and its impact on the Ghanaian economy. And I believe that this team will do just the very best for you. So my request to you is to give this team the very support that, or even more of the support that you gave me and my team. In exiting this position as chairman, the board has appointed Mr. Joe Mensah to take over the mantle of chairmanship from the 1st of July. We have informed the Bank of Ghana accordingly, and we're hoping for their positive response to that. So once again, I'd like to tell you that I've enjoyed every moment and the support that you've given me as chairman and to my fellow board members over the years. And I do hope and sincerely expect from you that you would continue to do same for the directors that you have now. You give your best to the bank in terms of support, and I can assure you they in turn will repay that level of confidence that you've imposed in them. So on that note, thank you very much. You wouldn't see me on this podium again, but for future years, I will be in the stands with you. And I am a conspirator. I will join you in asking for more dividends. Thank you ever so much. Thank you. So now I think Mr. Ashon should bless this whole occasion for us like he did in the opening, and then we can close the meeting. Or we have another pastor in the house. Okay. Or an apostle to Mr. Ashon. Thank you.
My name is Reverend Antonio Fori. Okay. Mr. Chairman, we are grateful. Please we can be on our feet. Heavenly Father, we are grateful and thankful. We thank you for your wisdom and your protection and your mercy. We thank you for a successful AGM. Heavenly Father, as we leave, we are not leaving your presence. We ask the Lord you protect and guide us. We commit CalBank into your hand. We ask for increase in every area of the bank. We commit the chairman into your hand even as he retired. Let new doors be opened unto him. We ask for strength. We ask for wisdom. Father, we commit the management into your hand. Commit the staff and shareholders into your hand. We ask the Lord you will continue to protect this bank, increase the bank, enlarge the bank. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. The meeting is formally closed now. Thank you.